Welcome to the Millennials and Community Podcast. On this episode, Matt and Carlo let their millennial proudly show as they discuss what the future has in store for our generation, how we will be called to be the next great leaders of our communities and countries, and what you can do to be ready. Thank you for being part of our community.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of Millennials and Community Podcast. My name is Matt, this is Carlo, and we are here today with episode 17 of season 2 of the show. Kick things off, as always, with our opening icebreaker. Carlo, what is one thing that you do that automatically identifies you to the world as a millennial?
That I do currently?
Yeah.
Oh, I think just the feeling of existential dread usually covers.
I don't know. I think Gen Z is pretty good at that too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Now, what is something that I do currently? I don't know. Come back. You got to come back to me with.
All right. So mine, and I'm sure there's more than one, but mine that I'm really, really proud of is that I know all the words to the "Don't You Put It in Your Mouth" infomercial. And so if you're listening, you're like, what on earth is that? This was like a campaign done by way of a TV ad in the 90s where it was these like weird little puppets. And the whole thing was like, it was a public service announcement to ensure that poisoning, or to try to prevent poisoning by making children more aware of the things that they're eating. And so it's like these two puppets that sing this like ridiculous little jingle of like, "Don't you put it in your mouth, don't you put it in your mouth." It's a repeat after me song. "Don't you stuff it in your face." And like you do this whole thing and it's just like, it's so nostalgic for me. And then it keeps going like, "You could get sick, ick, real quick, ick, real sick, real." Anyway, so it's a fantastic little jingle, and I think the fact that I know it all from start to finish, as you're looking at me with the most cringe face ever, I thought I did a really good job with my puppet voice. But nevertheless, that is what automatically identifies me as a millennial.
No, that's fair. I'll give you that. I don't know the words to that song all the way through, so I'm quite impressed. For me, this will also reveal just how much of a geek I am. If you've ever watched the original Pokemon animated series, every commercial break there was, "Who's that Pokemon?" And there'd be just like a silhouette of the Pokemon. Yeah, I know all 151 original Pokemon, including their names, their silhouettes, their types, and usually several of their attacks.
Have you kept it up, though? Like, do you know all of the new Gen Z Pokemon?
No, I gave up after Gen 3, and really the only ones that are ingrained are the best ones, which is the original 151.
So, very, very fair.
Yeah.
All right, so we've kind of, in the last few episodes, deviated a little bit, as we tend to do, from our typical bit. And we wanted to really kind of capture some of the things that we've danced around or alluded to, I guess, in previous episodes about millennials and kind of like what's next for the millennial generation. So, Carlo, take us away. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, this is going to be a really cool episode because I think we're just going to kind of let ourselves let loose. This is going to be arguably much more of an opinion piece and just kind of how we feel, I guess, the direction we're going. And for me, I've said this in a past episode, millennials are so uniquely equipped to do so many different things upcoming in this world. Like, we've managed to somehow navigate the baby boomers and working with them and living with them. We somehow are navigating the Gen Zers, being parents, not being parents, having things that we shouldn't have, like the access to the internet. Like, we're the only generation to have lived at a point where there was no internet, and now that there is, we have had just this amazing opportunity for so many different things, but we're starting to come to this point where we are going to have to step up to the plate. We are going to be the next leaders of our countries. We're going to be the next great CEOs. We're going to be the next great thought leaders. And never, arguably, has there been a generation with access to such unlimited amounts of information. You look at things like the advent and the expansion of AI and having those tools at our fingertips. there's just so many amazing things coming down the pipeline for us. And I'm really excited to see what we do with it, because we are also arguably one of the most socially conscious generations. And in a way that I feel is maybe a little bit more actionable, because, you know, you look back to the 70s and the flower power movement during the Vietnamese War and all that kind of stuff. And you can't argue that there was no activism, but it feels like the activism that we have is starting to make some very large waves in our community. And you look at the way that we accept each other and we support each other and we kind of go through some of these struggles together. And I'm just so excited to see what we're going to kind of accomplish and what we can do moving forward, because I do truly believe that we are the generation that will make or break our society for the next 300-400 years.
Yeah, not to be the harbinger of doom and gloom over here, like right after, you know, before we hit record, and I'm like, let's keep it upbeat. But I think that a lot of what you're saying is true, and it's going to be true out of necessity.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the next 50 years, there's going to be a lot of hard choices that collectively are going to have to be made. There's going to be some really, really intense shifts in the way that we understand how the world functions. And you're absolutely right. We're going to be in a position where we have to really steward the transition to whatever comes next. Now, I think that Gen Z is much better at being activists than millennials are, but I think that the role that millennials are going to have the opportunity to play is really going to be that of like trying to decipher the good and the constructive elements of the generations before us and figure out a way that we can weave that into how our society shifts moving forward. And so, you know, one of the things that you've talked about, you've alluded to, is like, yeah, we're going to have these powerful roles and this ability, whether in formal or informal positions, to like make a big impact. You've used the phrase the boss generation. So like, tell me more about what that means. And like, let's talk about like, what do we have to do as millennials to prepare to become this boss generation?
Yeah. So like the boss generation, I kind of think of it in this almost literal sense, is that we are hitting the points now where we're taking a lot of leadership roles in organizations, inside governmental bodies. You know, we're looking at the next stage of politicians. Hopefully, we'll soon start to bring down the median age, right? From apparently being 70 or 80.
Like it can't go much upwards without significant advancements in healthcare.
Yeah.
Like unless they're going to put like Joe Biden's head into like an android body.
Robo Biden? Yeah.
Robo Biden still like ice cream? Who's to say?
I have no idea. Hopefully he has some more concrete mental faculties. So, you know, we're going to be in these positions and kind of what you were talking about, Matt, where you feel like we are able to bridge the divide or to you know, bring in the opinions of these other generations, I think is a very key point. So maybe we aren't the full-on activists that the Gen Zers are, but we care about what the Gen Zers tend to care about. And because we want everybody to be happy and have equal opportunity and you know, be given what we can to help everybody out. So when we hear about this particular thing being of a concern to another generation, we don't do what generations in the past have done and go, oh, well, it's not about you. It's about me. It's about our current age bracket. It's about what is important in the world right now. No, we go, okay, well, how do we accommodate a little bit of everybody? And when you're in a position of power, that allows you to take action towards those kinds of things. And I think that's really exciting. And when we talk about this idea of like, what can we do to kind of prepare for this, I think that there's a little bit of responsibility that each individual one of us has to kind of take on our shoulders, in this idea that whether you feel you're going to end up in a quote unquote position of power or not, you have to understand that you will now very shortly, if not already, be a role model to somebody else. And it is your responsibility to be the best version of yourself. If you're going to be in a position of power, you should be somebody who is capable, who is well-read, who's well-traveled. You should be somebody who is capable of making good decisions. You should be capable of empathy. Like, those are all skills that are learned through sometimes hard-won lessons. But if you take the opportunity to grow yourself and expand in the right ways, and then you find yourself in that position of power, that position of influence, man, can you do some good if you've got a good head on your shoulders. And I think that's kind of where we've lost some previous generations, is the people that we've put in power and weren't the right people for everybody. They were the right person for some. And I think that leads to this kind of skewed scenario that we have now, where it very much feels like, we're always trying to do what's right for the rich guy rather than for the every guy. Right?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you introduced the word role model in this context, because I think that when we talk about the word power so often has such negative connotations.
Yeah.
I don't think that it should. I think that we all, in our own way, need to embrace the power that we have and whatever platform that we have in terms of being able to influence or impact the world in a positive way. And to me, I think that's really what it comes down to. We're not suggesting that not everybody's going to be an activist. Not everyone's going to be a politician. Not everybody's going to be a CEO. And that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. We're not suggesting that everyone should seek out those positions, have formalized power. What we're saying is that, we have a really, really key role to play, as you said, as the generation that has been in the front seat of the most dramatic change in several generations, which is like the advancement of the internet and all the things that have gone along with. So we've already lived through this, the change of the century, probably, not to put it dramatically, not to mention like pandemics and wars sprinkled in there. And so there's like some really, really, really awesome opportunity to really take this on our shoulders. What I think is one of the things, again, I'm just going to be the harbinger of doom, which is really weird for me. It's not my usual bit, but we're trying it on just for a bit. What I think is going to stand in our way, and you see it now. And I just want to full disclosure, we're anticipating that this episode is going to be released later in the fall. But we are recording this in the middle of August. So if I put in look into my crystal ball, there's a whole bunch of things that are happening right now. There was the U.S. election that just happened not long ago. And with where we are sitting when we're recording this in August, there certainly looks to be a very contentious race that certainly has the potential for some pretty significant discontent and fallout regardless of the outcome. I hope that that's not true, but it's hard to imagine that those things can't. And a lot of these conflicts that we see at a societal level are based on this premise that, we have rights rather than responsibilities. And I'm so sick of hearing people in the Western world talk about like my rights. I have the right to free speech. I have the right to own guns. I have these rights and those rights and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of Rights. And I'm just really, really, really sick of hearing people talk about their rights and never talking about the responsibility that they have. Yeah. And to me, like, how on earth can you feel privileged enough to claim that you have rights without expressing any desire to actually take responsibility to earn or pursue the privilege of having those rights afforded to you? And I think that's something that we as a generation need to contend with. We need to stop assuming that anything is our generic deity given right. Some omnipotent being has like carved into a stone that we get to say whatever we want and have guns. Like, we need to recognize that instead, in order for our society to perpetuate, that we need to take responsibility for certain things, and then maybe we'll earn the privilege of having rights that go along with.
Yeah. There's this kind of quote that I've seen many different times come up, and it goes, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And it's this very cyclical idea that what our forefathers have fought for to provide us in terms of rights were very hard won. And it took some very strong men and women, right? Some strong people to do what was necessary to maintain and establish those rights. But because all of that hard work was done, it created an easier environment for the next generations to come, and we got complacent. So now that we are back in this cycle of hard times coming, or / here, like, we are noticing a lot of really terrible things going on right now. The people at the helm are the weak men. They're the ones that have had the rights, the entitlement. They've had the ability to pretty much get whatever it is that they felt they needed or wanted in their life relatively easily. And now that the hard times are coming, they feel that they are being attacked because things aren't coming as easy anymore. But in reality, they are the ones that put us in this situation, right? And it is now going to require some strong people to set things right again, right? So again, we're in this kind of cyclical moment. And there are going to be a lot of different people, like you talked about, this kind of hurt feelings and this discontent no matter who wins the election. It's very, very true, because there's so many people that are going to be hurt because the person that they feel is in their best interest isn't the one that won. But right now, it's a battle between the haves and the have-nots for most things. You look at housing, you look at food, you look at like I read an article today, 1/4 of all Canadians will visit the food bank by the end of the year. I don't remember a time in my life that has ever been a thing. And in Alberta, we've been through many different recessions, but as a country, right, we constantly have these mega corporations that are making billions and billions of dollars on the backs of their people that they're paying $13 an hour to deliver their product or work in their store. Like, there's so many things that are messed up right now, and all of it has been caused by the complacency that we have had with the way, it's when you have a CEO of a company take home a $29 million bonus per quarter, and instead of saying, hold on, what do you think you're doing? If you can, if you can do that, why can't you afford to pay your person at your store more than $13 an hour? And completely letting that be okay. Or every time a major organization looks like it's going to go into bankruptcy, our governments turn around and save them. You can't have both sides. Do we either have a capitalist market where if a business is poorly run, it fails? Or do we have the opportunity for a company to do and make whatever it wants because we can't have government intervention? You can't, what was it? You can't privatize profits, but publicize failure. But that's exactly what we're doing. And because of that, our governments are overextended, our taxes are too high, we don't have basic necessities for people because we have let the weak people lead us into a position of hard times. So it is going to take a very massive shift, and it is going to take very strong people to make that shift. And what I am trying to say is that I believe somewhere in this group of millennials, through the hard times that we are experiencing, we are going to find those strong people. And it is their responsibility. And when I say there, I mean very much in the like globalist sense, their responsibility to that when they are given the opportunity to be put in a sense of leadership, role model, power, whatever it may be, that they understand that that was given to them because they have a responsibility to the people that put them there.
Can I ask you something? And I'm a huge nerd for geopolitics. And there's some 2024 has been a wildly interesting year, objectively a wildly interesting year for politics globally. And you're seeing a couple of trends kind of perpetuate across the democratic world. Things like people feeling disdain for the incumbent leader, which is very rare, right? Typically through political history, people prefer the evil they know to the evil they don't. But generally across the board, you're seeing a disdain for the incumbent. You're seeing things happen like, with the exception of some places, you're seeing a general move to younger politicians. So again, the optimism is there. Like there's some things happening. When we see the nature of politics becoming as divisive as it is, being very much one side and the other, what incentive is there for those strong millennials to step into this current infrastructure? Now, I say current very intentionally. As you're alluding to, I think a lot of these systems are going to be forced to change the way that they exist now. What incentive is there for the powerful or the strong millennials to involve themselves in a system that they feel is really, really, that they feel is broken?
There isn't one. I don't think there is really an incentive other than a drive to want to make a change. Right. And like if you look back over history, every time we've ever seen somebody make some sort of massive political change, they were fought with such fervor on that change. They were disliked. They were put down. They were, fighting this massive uphill battle. And then you look back and you go, what was the reason for you putting yourself through that personal turmoil? And the answer was because I was unhappy with the way things were and a change needed to be made. There was no pot of gold at the end. There was no pat on the back. Sure, almost anytime you end up in a position of power, especially on a political level, there's a monetary gain there, I'm sure. But like the story that comes to mind is like Nelson Mandela, right? Persecuted, jailed, all sorts of crazy things, but he still did what he did for the betterment of his country. So there is none other than to know that you might make a change for the betterment of others. But that's why this is not something that can be done by weak people. Only strong people can do it because they're willing to go through all of the hard for an ideal rather than a monetary or a power gain or whatever it may be. Only weak men chase money while hurting others, in my opinion.
Looks like we've switched the roles of the harbinger of doom and gloom over here. No, I think you're right. I think that there's certainly some like hard things ahead, but let's think then. Okay, so I think while I agree with you that we're probably entering a phase in the world where we're going to need some really, really strong leaders to step up in various positions and make hard choices, I think the way that gets done is going to be drastically different than we've seen in past generations. Sure. And hopefully we're not in a position where we're having like all out ground assault warfare and we're expecting people to go represent our various countries and alliances in any sort of global conflict. Hopefully that doesn't come to that in that sort of a way. So kind of the archetype of what a strong person is in that regard is going to change. I truly believe that the strong people are going to have to be the ones that are willing to admit when they're wrong, that are willing to be curious, that are willing to have hard conversations and are willing to make hard choices because they believe it's best, not because they believe it's going to get them reelected.
Yeah.
I think that the strong people are the ones who are willing to show their emotions and able to appreciate and understand that other people have emotions too. And I think that the strong people have to be willing to call people out rather than just pander to the loud groups of people who were previously privileged and now feel threatened. I think that all of these things need to take place. And I think that the good news is, like, we're really, really capable of it. Like, as human beings, we have just this wonderful capacity for resilience, wonderful capacity for empathy and compassion. And we forget it a lot. Like when we drive to work in the morning and you're honking and swearing through your car window at the person next to you, we forget it a lot, but we've got it. And so when I think about kind of shifting to the implications of community on this, I think about how important it is to remember who the people are and who the groups and communities are in our life. We've talked in previous episodes about the idea that when we feel threatened, our circles shrink, that our communities shrink, and we tend to bunker down with the people that are most close to us, our nuclear families, our close-knit groups of friends. And it becomes an us versus them mentality, because from an evolutionary standpoint, if I feel threatened and I feel like I can only provide for a smaller group, then I'm going to whittle that group down quite low. But I don't think that's the approach. I think that we need to keep our communities broad. We need to keep a diverse set of perspectives, lived experiences, peoples, cultures. We need to keep that wide range of diversities, because that's where the strength comes from, because the solution is not going to be in what we've always done. And the people that are closest to us, whether physically closest to us or the most similar to us, are only going to perpetuate the things that we've always done. And so if we're going to create these new solutions to these problems as they emerge, it's going to be done by combining and marinating and evolving perspectives from all different diversities, walks of life, lived experiences, indigenous ways of knowing. Like, all of these things have to be incorporated in order to get to that next step. And we've got the capacity to do it, but we're going to have to do it by broadening our circles rather than shrinking them.
And on a more literal level as well, you think about the power that a large group of people hold, right? So here in Canada, we have one grocery store one company by the name of Loblaws that owns pretty much the entirety of the grocery chain across Canada, including the majority in a lot of really small communities. And there are a lot of people that are quite upset, myself included, with the ever rising cost of food prices. And I know one of the big things for me is I believe that something as necessary for survival as food should not be something that is for profit, or at the very least excess profit. So there was a group of roughly like 80,000 people that did a month-long boycott. And was it enough to completely change the game? No, it wasn't. But it was really exciting to see how many people could band together to try and make a change with the power of their wallets, right? Choosing where your money goes is about the only thing that some of these large companies and governments will listen to anymore. And, one person, my, whatever $700 I buy a month of groceries is probably not going to make a difference. But 700 times 80,000 is definitely a bigger drop in the bucket. So in a literal sense, we need to band together for the betterment of everybody, because we have the power to make change as a group. Because if we can't change it in the traditional sense, like what you're saying, by, being elected into power because our systems are broken, or forcing accountability on high profiting companies because our systems are broken, we sure as hell can make a difference by choosing what we do with our money and our patronage and our time, right? If everybody decided they didn't like Netflix anymore and they all unsubscribed from Netflix collectively, what would happen to Netflix? It'd be gone. And that goes with any company. You have a lot of power in what you choose to do, especially when you organize as a group. And I think that as a community with the same goals and the same empathy for each other, regardless of our race, regardless of our income brackets, regardless of our geophysical locations, we have so much more in common and the struggles that we have than I think we realize. And we can do so much with that common ground. Right?
Totally agree. Totally agree. So how are we going to do it? We've got like 5 minutes. Let's solve the world in 5 minutes. This is the Mac section. Make actions count. So what are you prescribing for folks to do who are millennials and, you know, in the last 20 some odd minutes, you've become either really depressed or really inspired, maybe halfway oscillating between the two. So what are you prescribing to folks that, you know, kind of are in the same boat, feeling the way that we are and want to take steps to become stronger so they're ready when the time comes?
Yeah, I think that's the most crucial step right there, is that you have to make a decision that you don't want to just go with the flow anymore. Sometimes you hear people say, the world is going to crap, so I'm just going to pull myself into this little tiny bubble and I'm just going to let the wave ride and hopefully I come out the other side okay. And if that's what you want to do, great, just get out of the way. But if you want to be part of making a change for the betterment of everybody, you need to make that decision now, and you need to commit to becoming the best version of yourself possible. And what I mean by that is you need to develop yourself. You need to learn good soft skills, good hard skills. You need to learn how to do new things, become a little bit more self-reliant. We're such a massively consumerist society in ways that we really don't need to be. You need to learn how to work with others, how to make good friends, how to have good cooperation with your neighbors. You need to be aware of what is going on in the world. Now, I'll be the last person to ever tell you that you should sit in front of the news morning and evening, because, constantly negative news is a real thing, but you need to be aware of the injustices in this world and what are being done about them. And then, as we've talked about many, many times, you have to be willing to raise your voice when the time comes, even if it feels somewhat futile. So a good example of this was that we recently, several months back, had a vote in Parliament about putting into power a bill to limit grocery store profits. And it was you almost unanimously voted down by the Conservative and the Liberal Party. And I didn't know enough about it, and I didn't follow it closely enough, but I did send an email to my MP because I wanted to know what his reasoning for voting this down was. And unfortunately, the response I got back was almost like a marketing email blaming the Liberal Party for the cost of groceries and the carbon tax. So it said really nothing of value to me. But it opened a door for me to realize my voice has just a little bit of power. And if I can send an email once, why can't I send another one and another one and another one? And why can't I choose not to shop at a certain store anymore? And why can't I do this? So you need to use what little power we do have in as productive of a manner as possible, because we do have some, but you got to open that door for yourself and realize that you have to use it. You can't just sit on it. That's what I'm saying on like a broader level.
I like that. And I think that, certainly it's something that we've talked a lot about in previous episodes, and the importance of making sure that we are well, that we are not reliant or minimally reliant. Obviously, we live in a system where we're going to have some reliance on other humans. That's just kind of how humanity has always worked. But to be able to be as independent as possible by being the most healthy, well versions of ourselves. Certainly agree with that. And certainly agree that it's important to be informed and recognize the power in our small actions. So love those. Mine are very, very different in kind of the nature of it. This stuff can get really, really overwhelming.
Of course.
So I think it's really important for each of us to do two different things. Like, go find the elder people in your life, whatever that looks like, whether it's your parents, or if you're fortunate enough to still have your grandparents in your life, or aunts, uncles, whoever you consider to be like the wise older people in your world. Go and sit down and talk to them and ask them questions, learn about their perspectives, their experience, because as much as I am the first person to kind of scoff at the perspectives and the cynicisms and the biases of like generations older than us, there is so much valuable teachings and wisdoms that we don't want to lose from the previous generations. And not to say that we want to repeat or sustain the things that they've done, but we better damn well not make the same mistakes they made. So spend the time speaking to and learning from and listening with elders, however you define elder. Second one is do the complete opposite. Go and like, now I'm lucky. I have a platform and ability to do this more than a lot of people do, but like spend time having conversations with young people. One of the things that I've learned from almost all of my mentors, every single person that I've ever respected that has been a mentor to me has been excited about the opportunity to listen to somebody younger than them, relatively speaking, right? Like it could be someone 10 years younger or whatever. It doesn't have to be a child per se. And to me, that tells me that there is such value and strength in, one, a little bit more of a less jaded perspective on how the world should be.
Yes.
There's beauty and there's power and there's excitement and there's optimism in that. But also like learning about what they would do if they could. And again, there's, as we grow up, we learn all about how we can't do things. And when you talk to younger people, again, younger is relative, but when you talk to younger people, you start to wonder like, and imagine what could be done. And that's a really powerful thing. So if we have the chance to learn from our elders of what has been done, what they experience, and then listen to younger people and figure out what could be possible if we just open our eyes and imagine. And I think those are really, really key things. And then just lastly, like every single one of us has gifts that we have to be able to like bring to the world. And I'm so sick and tired of like people not being willing to step into their gift. Now, not everybody's gift is going to be standing up at a microphone for hundreds of people and speaking, but regardless of what your gift is, whatever capacity that you have to make the world a better place, I'm so sick and tired of people not having the self-confidence to lean into the gifts that they have. It's time that you get really, really clear about your abilities that you have to make the world a better place and just freaking go out and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. Because at the end of the day, when I talk about becoming the best version of yourself, that really means being as well-traveled as you can. And when I say well-traveled, what I mean is like you've experienced life. You've looked at both sides of the coin, the young and the old, the good and the bad. You've done what you can to educate yourself. You've maybe traveled a little bit. You've had experiences. You had love and loss and wins. And that is what makes you a well-rounded person. And a well-rounded person is a more empathetic and more able to understand that everybody has differing viewpoints. And it allows you to kind of bring that together in a way that could be used for great benefit and allow you to shoulder your responsibilities a little bit easier. So that is my hope for anybody that's listening to this episode that wants to or wants to step up to the mantle and be like, yeah, you know what, our time as a generation is coming. I want to be ready for it. It's just be your best version of yourself. Be an inspiration and a mentor for others so that as we move forward through the generations, we're not going to continue this weird cycle of weak men and hard times and being put in a position where two people have to talk about the potential bad that has to come soon. Because we can't keep on this unsustainable direction that we have.
Yeah. Can I offer a little bit of a curveball for the end of our episode?
Hit it. Let's do it.
I think that we've established a really beautiful practice in showing gratitude to each other. And I hope that in doing so, we've inspired and encouraged any of you listeners to actively show more gratitude to the other people in your life. I think too, and especially given the nature of this episode and the things that we've talked about, I want to flip it around today. Because if I know we talk so much about how important it is to practice showing kindness to other people, whether it be in the form of gratitude or service or whatever that is. I also know that in a world that's as like fucked up as this one is, that it is increasingly hard to be kind to others in the absence of taking the time to be kind to ourselves. And I think that in order for us to authentically and genuinely be that for other people, we need to learn how to do it for ourselves as well. So what I'd like for both of us to do is share a bit of like self-gratitude for everybody. Not from the standpoint of like bragging or tooting our own horn or anything like that, but just as a method and a practice of saying, you know what? Again, recognizing our gifts, being grateful for our gifts, and being able to claim that this is how we're going to show up and this is the way that we're going to impact the world in a really, really powerful way. And if we're going to squirrel away and not share those gifts, then we do everyone a disservice, and it's not sustainable because we're just trying to give to others out of the limited capacity that we're not refilling by showing that care and kindness to ourselves. So I'll jump in. I mean, I'm really proud of the way that I'm able to create places where people feel safe. And it's something that we've talked a lot about, but it's something that I am insanely proud of. And in a lot of contexts and in a lot of ways, most recently, you know, we've talked about over the Calgary Stampede, how there's a lot of people hosted, and lots of people were able to come and share with me how at home they felt. And just at home to me is another like synonym for feeling safe.
Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly. And I'm really, really grateful that I'm able to create spaces like that for other people. And that's one of the things that I want to continue to be able to do.
You are very, very good at that. For me, I've always had this very blessed feeling of knowing that I'm good with my words. I can usually articulate what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking pretty well and get my point across to people. And with a little bit of a sense of humility, I like to believe that because I am somebody that is capable of understanding two sides of a coin, and I regard myself as generally educated and smart, that I can portray that knowledge and I can provide mentorship and leadership to people through my words that others aren't really capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such an immense power to have that comes with such a high level of responsibility to use properly. So like when we're in a scenario such as this, like with the podcast, please understand there isn't a single word that I say that I don't feel some weight to, because I know that people are likely to listen to what I have to say. And I want to make sure what I am saying is not going to hurt or hinder anybody beyond maybe a reality check that might need to happen sometimes. So that I'm grateful for that skill set that I have.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that's, again, that episode kind of tiptoed on the tightrope between joy, inspiration, and immense dreads. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sticking around. And whatever you need to do to make yourself feel well after kind of like coming toe to toe with feelings like this, make sure you go outside and practice it. A lot of times it's going outside, getting some fresh air, spend time with people you love, whatever that is, go and do those things. And thank you for being here with us. And as always, you know where to find us in the Millennials and Community podcast, your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, all of the social media apps. Please feel free to reach out, connect, don't be a stranger. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us for this wild ride, guys. Bye.